Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us for our weekly learning in the book of Mishle, where we gather from the wisdom of King Solomon himself in the book of Proverbs. You can find it if you want to look online. We are in Proverbs chapter 3. And I wanted actually to start off today by thanking one of our listeners, Dr. Ruth Cohen, who really pointed out something very important. I mentioned Dr. Semmelweis, who was I'm sorry, I mentioned the doctor, spoiler alert. I mentioned a doctor in the 1800s who discovered many of the fundamentals of the life-saving qualities of cleaning your hands, sanitizing your hands, and his name was Dr. I didn't know his name, and I mentioned that in the class. And Dr. Ruth Cohen sent me a letter and pointed it out. That his name was Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis, and he lived in the 1800s. He was a Hungarian. He was a Hungarian German doctor, and he really discovered that in the hospital where they were delivering babies, there were three times the amount of babies dying in the babies delivered by doctors than there were by nurses and midwives. And so he wondered why that was. And he said, well, it's probably for a reason. And he looked into that and he realized that the reason babies being delivered by doctors were dying more than babies being delivered by midwives was that the doctors were operating on many other people and then using the same hands without washing them to deliver the other babies, which was causing infection. Unfortunately, his wisdom was not appreciated. People thought he was out of his mind, and tragically, he was committed to a mental asylum where he died, actually, tragically. And the lesson is how sometimes wisdom has to be presented properly and in its time and to the right people, because otherwise that wisdom is sometimes not appreciated. Thank you again to everyone who's joining us now. Thank you. We were up to chapter 3, verse 18, a very famous verse. The Torah says, I'm sorry, not the Torah, the book of Proverbs, King Solomon says, Etz chaim hi lamachazikim ba. It is a tree of life to those who hold on to it. And we said that the meaning of the tree of life, the meaning of the tree of life is two ways. Number one, it's a tree of life for those who hold on to it, as in they're holding on to it for dear life. From the horrors of the instability of the world, they seek refuge and they find the Torah to be an anchor. So, etz chaim hi machazikim ba. And secondly, it is also a tree of life to those who make sure to uphold the Torah. They hold it up, and that's what it means, la machazikim ba. Next verse, Hashem b'choch. By the way, many very famous verses today. You'll see. Hashem b'chochma yasad eretz konen shamayim b'tbuna. God used wisdom to establish the universe, and He created the skies with wisdom. So King Solomon is telling you how powerful wisdom is. The very existence of this universe is an incredible manifestation of wisdom. You look at the galaxies, the stars, the moon, uh, the whole solar system, and it's just incredible, one big incredible display of wisdom that's unfathomable, and we're still studying it and learning more every day. So that's how much you should appreciate wisdom. Wisdom is literally what put this world into existence. B'da'ato tehomot nivkeu. With God's wisdom, the foundations of the world opened up. Ushchakim yira'afu, and the heavens bring down dew. And so King Solomon tells us, and remember, he always gives advice using the word beni, my son, because if you don't love someone, if you don't give someone information because you're caring about them, it's not really going to be heard. So that's why King Solomon, every time he gives advice, he says, beni, my child. Al yaluzu meinecha. Don't let wisdom depart from your eye. Nitzor tushiyal mezima. Always look for wisdom. Always look for not just wisdom that is going to be knowledge, the wisdom that's going to allow itself to sprout, to make you courageous, to make you able to take initiative and come to new conclusions based on the wisdom you drew already. Verse 22. It will be life unto your soul. V'chen legargerotecha. It will be like a beautiful necklace of diamonds on your neck. Az telech lavetach raglecha. Then, if you are with wisdom, your foot will go in confidence. Too many times we see people who are very, very, very smart make terrible mistakes. And the idea King Solomon is saying is if you want to make sure your stepping and your path is flawless, make sure you carry it in your ways. Don't say, oh, once many years ago I learned this and forget about it. Make sure the wisdom are the prisms through which you see everything. And that way you will not stumble. Don't forget the wisdom. He says, "Alia luzu meinecha." Just like you keep, if you're wearing glasses, you keep the glasses on if you want to see. So too, make sure you keep the wisdom that you acquire as something through which you see everything in your life. Next verse is verse 24. Az tishkav lo tifchad. Then you will be able to go to sleep and not be afraid. V'shachavta ve'arvashnatecha. How many times have you gotten a good night's sleep in hours, in quantity, but not in quality? Or the opposite. How many times did you go to sleep in a late hour, but you got a power nap? You woke up from this short sleep and you were like, wow, that is a good sleep. King Solomon says, if you keep wisdom as a candle to light your path up, not only will you be able to sleep, but also arvash natecha. You will be able to feel good. You'll be able to know that everything is good. And now we come to a verse that's very famous, so much so that Chabad Hasidim say it at the end of the prayer 3 times a day. I mentioned Chabad Hasidim because today is also the yard site of the penultimate, the previous, I guess they call him, Lubavitcher Rebbe, and Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, and he passed away in 1950 on this day, and they sing this verse, and it very much has to do with his life. Why? It says, "Al tirami pachad pitom." Do not be afraid of sudden, uh, something scary suddenly. Do not be afraid of something that comes suddenly. And now he lived through the Soviet Union. He came to America later with a lot of help, a lot of lobbying, and he really, stood in the KGB rooms. In fact, he was sentenced to death. And had he not been saved by American pressure, he would have been put to death by the Soviets. And so, in the face of everything that was going on in Soviet Russia, he advocated for Jewish education really in the 1930s and 40s, which was the worst of it all. And so they sing this verse, which is from Mishlei, Al tirami pachad pitom. Do not be afraid of sudden fear. Umishoat risha'im kitavo. Now, sho'ah, as I said, is a word that to us has a whole different meaning than it does in the Bible. Sho'ah in the Bible means a dark event, a bad dark event. Shoah, as you know, is also the term we use for Holocaust, and it was used as an event that is dark and overwhelming, but obviously much more dark and overwhelming than anyone had imagined in the days of King Solomon. Be afraid if something scary happens suddenly. Umishoat rishaim, and also don't be afraid from the shoah of the wicked, the destruction of the wicked. There are two ways to understand that. The sho'at rasha'im can either mean the destruction the wicked are bringing on you. Don't be afraid of the destruction that the wicked are bringing on you. Alternatively, don't be afraid when you see the wicked succeeding. Don't be afraid. Don't be like, oh, how are the wicked succeeding for so long? How are the wicked succeeding for so long? Because kitavod, because their downfall will come. The rabbi mentioned before, I see a question. The rabbi mentioned before is the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, who passed away today. Today is his yard site, and his name was Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson. He passed away in 1950 or 51, and then his son-in-law, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, was the continuer of that legacy, and took it even to a bigger level in terms of the operations and scope. So the pasuk says it again. Al tira mipachad pitom umishoat reshaim kitavo. Do not be afraid of a sudden fear. Umishoat reshaim kitavo. And do not be afraid of the downfall of the wicked, because it will come. Two ways to understand that. Either it means don't be frustrated by the fact that the wicked are succeeding and not punished, because their destruction will come. Or it means don't be afraid when that destruction that the wicked bring about comes, because eventually you'll be okay. Ki Hashem yihye bekislecha, for God will be the one you can trust. V'shamar raglecha milaked, and He will protect your foot from being entrapped. And now we come to a really beautiful verse, which is just beyond, beyond, beyond important in life, in terms of leading a good and meaningful life. And I'm going to tell you also about a very famous commencement speech, very famous, which was given in the University of Buffalo, but I'll get to that in a second. Al timna tov mi ba'alav. King Solomon says, do not withhold something good from its possessor, from its rightful owner. Bihiyot le'el yadcha la'asot. And when you have the strength to do something, make sure that you do it. Now, there's two parts here. Al timna tov mi ba'alav. Do not prevent or withhold good from its owner. What does that mean? If you have I'll give a story. I once went to a shul that had probably 70 seats. There were 70 empty seats, and I walk in, and I'm one of the first two people in the shul. All right, I look around. There's 70 empty seats. I sit down, and someone comes over to me and says, "I'm sorry, but you're in someone's seat." Now I look around me and I see there's like 70 empty seats. So what do you mean? Well, why do I need to get up? So King Solomon says, Al timna tov mibalav. If you see something that is coming to someone, don't be the one to stand between them and that. Now, obviously, I didn't own that seat, but the point King Solomon says is that if there's ever good that can come to someone, don't withhold it. The rabbis say that when the Jews came into Israel, Yehoshua made 10 rules that would have to be agreed on. One of the rules he made, and they were all sort of general civil society rules, one of the rules he made is that every single field will have a path through it, and the public can go through that field, and the owner cannot stop them. Why? Because if you're walking somewhere, today we have blocks. So you're walking on Lexington Avenue, you can turn right on, in our case, 68th Street. But imagine you wouldn't have those blocks to turn. Imagine every single street would be blocked. You'd have to walk a mile north in order to get over a short space. So what Joshua did is he said, look, guys, you're entering a land and everyone owns a field. But if we all become selfish, if we all say, okay, this is my field, I'm not going to let anyone through it. So if someone needs to go to their neighbor, they're going to have to walk miles. And so Joshua made a rule. He said, even when you get your land, even when you get a new field, you have to allow or allocate in your very big field a path to let people through, because otherwise life here will be very difficult. Al timna tov mi ba'alav. The rabbis understand this to mean don't withhold something from someone who can come to it, from someone who can get it. It doesn't mean they actually own it. It means if you can allow something, let's say you have something that you can give to the public that is, for example, give an example. Let's say I don't know. Let's say you have a family picture that a lot of people in your family would appreciate, and you can just take a picture and send it them. Do that. Let's say you have something. If you have something that you can share with others, and it's going to cost you absolutely nothing, and it's going to make their lives much better, don't withhold it from them. This isn't to say Judaism doesn't believe in free market. It just means if there's something that makes everyone's life easy and it costs you nothing, make sure you allow for that. Now, even more importantly, bihiyot le'el yadcha la'asot. If you have the power of doing something, do it. Don't wait for tomorrow. Don't wait the next day. Make sure you do it. If you can help someone, if you can do something, get it done. There's a very famous commencement speech that was given by a fellow named George. I'm forgetting his last name. He gave a commencement speech in the University of Buffalo that went viral and then was written up in the New York Times. But basically, he said, "What is my biggest regret in life? I made a lot of money. I traveled the world. What is my biggest regret? Was it this injury? Was it this? What do I regret?" And so he says, "What I regret most, there was a girl who came to my class when I was in sixth grade, and everyone made fun of her and everyone bullied her, and she had no friends." And he says, "I actually was a good guy. I said hello to her. I didn't do anything mean." And then after a few months, she moved out of the neighborhood. She left. She disappeared, just like she came. Now, he says, "I was one of the good people. I didn't do anything bad to her. But my biggest regret in life is not doing more to be nice to her. It's not asking others to be nice to her." And he says, the biggest regret you will have in life, he's speaking in a commencement speech. So he's speaking to people who are graduating college, who are looking at what their lives may look like. And he says to them, the biggest regret you will have in life is you is not being kind. He calls it failures of kindness. If you have the opportunity to be kind, do it. Don't wait till tomorrow or the next day, because that opportunity will not come back. So the example of his friend in the sixth grade, he was able to be kind to her. He was able to stop that bullying, and he didn't. And when he was in his 50s, very successful, well traveled, everything, that was his biggest regret. King Solomon says, "Bihiyot le'el yadcha la'asot." If you're able to do something, do it. I see we're getting a comment here that I guess I didn't even know this name. It's called equestrian trails, where basically people can go through so they don't have to walk a mile around. Excellent, and that beautiful. That's a idea that the Talmud says that Joshua established when they went into the land of Israel. Excellent. Very, very beautiful. I love this explanation, this comment. Uh, Same idea as Joshua. Excellent. Very beautiful. If you want to look it up, it's called the 10 takanot that Joshua put into place. All right. We continue with the next verse, and that is verse 28. Verse 28. Al tomar lereacha lech vashuv umachar eten v'yesh itach. Very important. Did you ever ask someone for a response and have to nudge them? And I'm gonna have to say I'm guilty of that, right? Did anyone ever send you a wedding or invitation or something and you don't respond? I remember when we got married, we were really frustrated because you need to know the seat count. You need to know how many people are coming, and people don't respond. And so, and I must say I'm still guilty of not always responding as fast as I should. King Solomon says this is especially very critical. I'm sorry, Rashi explains this is very critical when it's talking about a poor person. When someone poor comes to you and says, "Can you please do me a favor? I need a loan. I need charity. I need help." Don't say, "Come tomorrow," if it's something you can give them today. If there's something you can give them today, don't say, "Oh, come back tomorrow," because why? The person needs it. You have it. What's the point? In similar way, there's a very strong prohibition in Jewish law against courts delaying justice. If you're a judge in a court, you need to give justice. Doesn't mean you shouldn't deliberate. It doesn't mean you shouldn't wait. But when you're able, when you have the answer, it's called inui hadin. Inui hadin means you sort of torture and extend the judgment. Sometimes today people have trials that take 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and it's just an incredible amount of suffering and pain for the families. So when you can do something, do so expeditiously. Similarly, King Solomon says, uh, do not al tomar lereacha, do not tell your friend lech vashuv, go and come back, umachareten, and I'll give you tomorrow, v'yeshitach. Or Rashi says this can also include payment. When someone comes to you and says, I painted your house, can you please pay me? Don't push them off. Pay them right on time. Now we come to a verse that is so important. Actually, cannot be overstated how important this verse is. Al tacharosh al reacha ra'a. Do not conspire or think and plot evil about your friend. Vehu yoshev lavetach itach. By the way, yes, the name. Thank you so much. I see we have this from Julia. The name of the op-ed that I mentioned was George Saunders on failures of kindness. Yes, and that's on the verse of where he says, "Biyot la'el yadcha ta'aseh." Make sure if you have the ability to help someone, make sure you help. Thank you. Yes. So again, it's George Saunders, which was given in the University of Buffalo and later in the New York Times. All right, so the next verse is Al tacharosh al re'acha ra'a vehu yoshev lavetach itach. Do not conspire and plot evil against your friend when your friend is sitting comfortably with you. Meaning, well, just let me take a step back. In general, a person should not conspire or plot anything evil. However, if that friend is sitting and trusting you, and you are at the same time plotting something against them, that is considered very immoral. And one of the beautiful things about the book of Mishlei is that in the Torah we divide things by, permitted, not permitted. Is it a serious prohibition? Is it a lav? Is it a kareh? King Solomon points to things that may not even be a sin in the Torah. They are behavioral, they are character traits. And he says, here's something that is an absolutely abhorrent thing. I see I was wrong. It was University of Syracuse. Yes. So King Solomon says, "Al tachrosh al re'acha ra'a." If your friend is sitting with you comfortably, do not plot against them. And uh, the rabbis say this is talking actually about a prohibition. If someone is married to someone, it says lo yishev adam im isha v'dato legarsha. If someone is planning on divorcing their spouse, they and it's a done deal in their head. They are, it's happening. They're not allowed to say, okay, I'm divorcing this person, but let me do it in a year from now so that I can really nail the guy. No, if the or the whatever it is, if they're sitting with you in confidence, they're confiding with you, you're leading a trusting relationship. Do not plot behind their back something which will come to haunt them. Al tacharosh al re'acha. And Rashi says the word lacharosh is similar to the word lacharosh when you plow a field. You plow a field, you put a seed. So Rashi says this is talking about someone who's plotting. So if someone has a spouse, a coworker, whatever it may be, it's a moral crime to go and while they are sitting with you in confidence to plot behind their back and sort of plot a way that's going to hurt them. And it's sort of for several reasons. One is you have the idea of a sort of misuse of trust. The person is sitting with you, he's trusting you, he's interacting with you in a way that's trusting, and so to use that trust against them is a moral crime. It's a double crime here. Al tacharosh al re'acha ra'a. Do not think and plot against someone else something bad. V'hu yoshev lavetach itach. He is sitting with you in confidence, trusting you, and doesn't know what you're planning behind their back. So very very important. King Solomon says that's something immoral. If someone trusts you, don't misuse that trust. Next, again, also very important. Al tariv im adam chinam im lo gmalcha ra'a. Also very important. People sort of overlook this today, especially with the preponderance of social media. Al tariv im adam chinam. Do not get into a fight with a person im lo gmalcha ra'a, if a person did not commit something against you. Meaning, there's a saying in Yiddish where people say, "How are you a mechutin to this?" Mechutin means like a parent of the bride or the groom. So sometimes there's a fight, and people will ask the guy who's in the fight, like, "How did you even come to this?" So it says, "Al tacharosh al re'acha ra'a." Do not plot something that is evil against someone. I'm sorry. Do not al tarim im adam chinam. Do not fight with someone for no reason. Imlog malcha ra'a. If they did not do anything bad for you, don't get into a fight that is going to that is going to do nothing for you. There's a very famous principle given by the Chafetz Chaim Rabbi Yisrael Meir Cohen of Radin, where he says a person should allocate a certain amount of money every year to for their peace foundation. What does it mean, your peace foundation? Take $100 a year. I'll give an amount. Take $100 a year. I'll tell you right now. And these $100, I assure you, will guarantee you much more happiness than you can imagine. Why? Take $100 a year and call it your happiness fund. Now, how many times have you gotten upset at the person in the grocery store over $2, the person on the train station over $1, you get into a fight with a neighbor maybe over who's going to have to pay for the tax $5. How many of the grievances that we have, the heartaches that we have, the conflicts that we have are over a small amount of money? And so the Chafetz Chaim says, take that money and decide ahead of time, here's my happiness money. Where if there's ever a fight, a grief, you ordered something on Amazon for $3, they sent you the $5 one, you drive yourself crazy for it, spare yourself the grief. Put aside ahead of time about $100 a year and say, you know what? Next time I feel frustrated, I feel aggravated, I feel like, that I need to go and complain to the manager, the owner of the store, the conductor, whoever it may be, and say, you know what? I am just going to let it go. I'm going to let it go for the sake of my happiness, my mental health, my spirituality. Let go of it. And definitely, if someone didn't do anything to you, don't get into a fight with them because what do you have to gain? There's a very famous book called, it's written by the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher of Ashkenaz. And he says that if there's any fight ever, ask yourself, how is this? How am I party to this? Do I need to get involved? Al tarivi madam chinam. Do not get into a fight with someone for free. Im lo gmal chara. If the person didn't do anything to you, why mix in? I guess that's the I don't know if that's a Yiddishism or a English word, but mix in, right? Sometimes they say don't mix in. Like, what do you have to get involved? That's what he is saying. Next, verse 31. We're almost finished the chapter. By the way, I want to congratulate and thank everyone because this is tremendous progress. I think we are almost up to chapter 4. Al tekane beish Hamas. Do not be jealous of a person who is financially dishonest and successful. V'al tibchar b'chol derachav. Don't use their success in order to envy them. If someone is if Bernie Madoff is successful, it doesn't mean you have to be jealous or take that path. Al tekane beish Hamas. Do not be jealous of a person of theft. Ve'al tivchar b'chol derachav. Do not choose any of his ways. Why? Uh, why not? Right? Why not be jealous of Bernie Madoff? He's successful. It looked originally. Well, no. Kito evat Hashem naloz. God despises the crooked. Ve'et yesharim sodo. God loves uh, and conveys in confidence to those who are honest, to those who are forthright, to those who are straightforward. Ki toavat Hashem naloz ve'et yesharim sodo, because God despises the crooked and loves the honest. And then next, me'erat Hashem beveit rasha. Sometimes you walk outside a house, a mansion, and you say, "Oh my goodness, look at the pool, look at the helipad, look at the trees, look at the, God knows whatever it is that they have in this luxury mansion," and you say, "Oh, I wish I could be in there. I wish I could have such a house." But the pasuk says, "Me'erat Hashem beveit rasha." Sometimes you'll see this beautiful house, but it actually has the curse of Hashem, meaning it's a place you wouldn't want to be. It's a place devoid of joy, of meaning, of spirituality. You know what is very blessed? Neve tzadikim yevorach. The house of the righteous is going to be blessed. How many times have you been in a place that's a small apartment and it just feels like it's a blessing? I don't know if anyone ever visited the Amish, but you go and you just feel this incredible warmth, even though they have these old houses, very old fashioned. Nonetheless, you feel like there's a hominess to it, a warmth to it. And so, Nevet Tzadikim Yevorach, the house of the righteous, even if it's not as big, even if it's not as fancy as the house of the wicked, nonetheless, it is filled with God's blessings. We're almost at the end of chapter 3. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone, number one, everyone who's here, who's joining, who's listening. I'd like to thank everyone. I'd like to thank everyone who sent me information, whether it's Dr. Ruth Cohen, Julia, anyone else who has about the doctor who was in Vienna in the 1800s, or the story of George Sandhouse, whatever other inspiring things. And last but not least, the Park East IT team for always being so helpful. Be'ezrat Hashem, next week, same time, same place. Thank you to everyone, and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much for tuning in.